He didn't mean to cause a scene. He just wanted cash for rent, a little breathing room. 27, rough beard, denim jacket. No job for 5 months. He walked into the pawn shop with a cracked leather pouch in one hand and quiet desperation in the other. He didn't know the watch was special, just looking to sell, he said, placing it on the glass. A battered Hamilton, worn face, ticking slow like it remembered something. The old man behind the counter barely glanced at it before shrugging. $10. Maybe 15. But someone in the back heard the tick and froze. Boots scraped the concrete floor. A man stepped into view, late 40s, broad shoulders, military haircut long outgrown. His eyes locked on the watch. "Where did you get that?" The young man blinked. "It was in my dad's stuff. I found it when we cleaned out his storage unit last week." The man's jaw clenched. "That's not possible." He stepped closer, not taking his eyes off the dial. "That's ADSR Hamilton, special issue. We buried that watch 20 years ago." The room went still. Another man entered from the back. His stare was sharper. "Who's your father?" The young man hesitated. "David Keller." The name hit like a gunshot. The men stiffened. "That name's sealed," one whispered. "He served under blackout protocols. He was never listed as discharged or dead." The younger man stepped back slightly. "He died in 2006. I was 8. "No," the older man said firmly. "If he had that watch, he didn't die in 2006. He disappeared." Silence hung heavy. "You need to come with us. Right now." The young man frowned. "Wait, what is this?" The taller man answered without blinking. "That watch is a grave marker. If it's surface ... Someone opened a file that was never meant to be touched." The shop lights flickered. A truck outside reversed slowly and stopped without anyone stepping out. "Are we being followed?" the young man asked. "No," the taller man said, locking the door. "You were being watched long before you stepped in here." Michael Keller never thought something as small as a watch could change the air around him. It sat in the middle of the pawnshop counter, catching the weak sunlight filtering through the grimy window. The old Hamilton looked harmless enough, cracked leather band, scuffed face, time ticking steadily. But the moment the shop owner laid eyes on it, silence fell. Not awkward silence, fear. The kind that made your breath slow down just to hear what might happen next. "You bring this in here?" the owner asked, voice suddenly low. His name tag said Leonard, but the man who had been chatty a moment ago now spoke like someone else entirely. Michael nodded. "It belonged to my father. Found it boxed up with his service stuff." The old man didn't touch it. He just stared at the ticking hands like they might jump. "Where exactly did he serve?" Michael shrugged. "Army. He died when I was 9. Afghanistan." Leonard's jaw moved like he was chewing on something invisible. Then he reached under the counter and locked the front door. Michael's spine straightened. "What are you doing?" Leonard didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a corded phone from under the desk, one of those military green ones with a rotary dial. "I have one," he said to whoever was on the other end. "No." Ticking. "Yes. Just now." A pause. "Hamilton." Another pause. "Understood." He hung up. "You should sit down, son. You're not walking out of here for a little while." Michael didn't sit. What the hell is going on? But before Leonard could answer, the back door creaked open and 2 men entered. No words, no introductions. The taller one was built like a fire door, flat face, flat chest, grey jacket. The other one, leaner, had sharp cheekbones and eyes that didn't blink often. Both wore nothing indicating law enforcement or military. And yet, they had that feel, the kind that filled a room even if they said nothing. "You Michael Keller?" asked the lean one. Michael hesitated, then nodded. They ignored Leonard entirely. The tall one approached the counter, looked at the watch, then at Michael. "Where'd you get this?" "It was my dad's." "What was his name?" "James Keller." That made the tall one exchange a look with his partner. "He's supposed to be dead," the lean one muttered. He is, Michael snapped. Since 2006, closed casket. Yeah, no body. Michael's mouth went dry. That's not uncommon in combat. The tall one finally picked up the watch, but with gloves. He turned it over slowly, then whistled under his breath, Operation Deep Rust. Michael blinked. What's that? They didn't answer. The tall one he finally introduced himself as Braith just nodded toward the back. We need you to come with us. Now. Why? Because this watch shouldn't be ticking. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what the hell this is. The lean one stepped closer. That Hamilton isn't just a timepiece. It was part of a program, not a mission to kill list. If it's ticking again, someone just reactivated the last thread left open. And if you're holding it, that means you're the bait. 10 minutes later, Michael was in the back seat of an unmarked truck with the windows taped shut. No GPS, no cell reception, just 3 men and the sound of old tires chewing gravel. They drove for nearly an hour, down roads with no names, into stretches of woodland that didn't show up on Google Maps. Braith finally spoke. There were 15 men on Deep Rust, elite recovery, exfil, silent elimination. If they were seen, the government swore they never existed. Your father was one of them. That's impossible, Michael said. My dad fixed bikes and did drywall on weekends. Sure, the lean one turned around from the passenger seat. That's what he wanted you to believe. But men like your father don't die in combat. They get erased. Michael clenched his fists. Why now? Why is the watch ticking? Because something's been triggered, Braith said. And the last known key to stop it is that watch. We thought they were all destroyed. But one slipped through, Shaw added. And now, whoever's still left alive ... will either come for you or through you. They arrived at a forgotten air hangar, fenced by rusted wire and overgrown trees. From the outside, it looked condemned. But inside, it hummed faintly, lights flickered on as they stepped in. In the middle of the room stood a steel table, lined with dust-covered files, yellowed photographs, and a locked metal crate. Michael recognized none of it until he saw the photo. A younger version of his father, in desert camo, arm around a man he didn't recognize, on his wrist, the Hamilton. That's not just a keepsake, Braith said. That's a signal. These watches were assigned only to Deep Rust, synchronized. When one starts ticking, it pings the others. It means someone is alive who shouldn't be. Michael stared at the crate. What's in there? Shaw unlocked it with a code only he knew. Inside was another Hamilton identical, but this one wasn't ticking. The second hand sat frozen at 2:13. That belonged to Captain Jensen. Last seen in Belarus, 2003. We recovered it buried under 16 feet of ice. Michael looked back at his own. Still ticking. In fact, it felt louder now. Like it had a heartbeat. So what happens now? Braith walked slowly toward a wall panel and pulled it open. Inside were blueprints, maps that had been redacted, lines drawn through places that didn't exist anymore. Now we find out who set the chain in motion. And we start with the name that was never supposed to reach daylight, Krestov. The moment he said it, the hangar lights dimmed. Not like a power outage, like something had interfered. The Hamilton on Michael's wrist clicked twice and stopped. Did you do that? He asked. Shaw and Braith were already moving. Guns drawn, eyes sharp. No, Braith said. But someone just opened the other end. From the corner of the hangar, a shadow moved. Not footsteps, just movement. And then a figure stepped out. Same desert camo as the photo. Scar across the face, hands empty. You don't know me, Keller, the man said. But I was there when your father made the call. He said, if anyone ever found that watch, they were to be told the truth. Michael squinted. What truth? That he didn't die. He traded his life to seal a door. And now you've opened it. The man raised his hand slowly. I'm not your enemy, but they'll come. They'll come wearing your father's face, his voice, even his memories. You'll believe it's him. It won't be. Shaw stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man said nothing, just pulled up his sleeve. On his wrist, a third Hamilton, also ticking. Michael stepped back. "What does that mean?" "It means the countdown has begun," the man said. "And you're not being hunted for what you know. You're being hunted for what that watch will show." Braith said it before Michael could. "You mean coordinates?" The man nodded. "And not to a place, to a person." The hangar suddenly rattled, deep vibrations rising from the floor like a tremor. Alarms, old and analog, screamed to life. Shaw pulled Michael aside. "It's starting. Whatever your father tried to bury, it's waking up." Michael looked at the watch again. This time, it was flashing, not a light. Just the hands spinning faster, counterclockwise. Braith grabbed his radio. "We need lockdown. Phase 9. No exits." The voice on the other end responded in static. "Too late." A thud echoed from the roof. Then another, like something heavy was crawling across it. Michael's watch began to bleed heat into his wrist. Not burning, but warm enough to feel alive. And just like that, the power went out. The darkness wasn't total. Emergency lights hummed dimly, casting long, sickly shadows against cracked concrete walls. Michael's breathing echoed loud enough to drown out the faint clicking of his own heartbeat. Outside, the world might still be normal. But inside this hangar, time had fractured. The watch on his wrist pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat syncing with his own panic. Braith crouched near the control panel, fingers dancing across a dusty keyboard, trying to bring the power back. "It's a kill switch," he muttered. "Someone triggered lockdown protocols." "We're sealed in." Shaw scanned the room with a trained gaze, eyes sharp even in the red glow. "Hostiles inbound, quiet, professional. No chatter." Michael swallowed hard, wondering what nightmare had just broken loose. The scarred man who'd appeared earlier stood silently against a metal pillar. He looked every inch a soldier haunted by ghosts, his jaw clenched, eyes distant. "They're here for the watch," he said, voice low, almost resigned. "And for you." Michael's skin prickled. "Why me?" The man's eyes flicked to the ticking Hamilton. "Because you carry the last piece, and they want to bury it again." Suddenly, the far end of the hangar door shuddered, a metallic groan that echoed like thunder. Someone was trying to force entry. Braith raised his rifle, signaling the others, "Hold positions. Wait for breach." The seconds dragged, stretching until every breath seemed to crack the silence. Then, with a deafening crash, the doors exploded inward. Figures moved through the smoke, 5 of them, all clad in black tactical gear, faces obscured by night vision goggles. They didn't speak, they didn't hesitate. Their weapons tracked every shadow, every flicker. Michael's mind raced. He wasn't trained for this, not really. But the ghost of ROTC drills long past flickered in his muscles. Braith opened fire first shots, ripping through the air with sharp authority. The attackers responded with precision, weaving between steel pillars, closing the distance. The hangar erupted into chaos. Metal clangs, shouted commands muffled behind masks. The acrid smell of gunpowder and sweat filled the air. Michael dove behind a crate, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the gunfire. Shaw moved beside him, firing bursts with deadly accuracy. "We need to get to the back exit," he shouted. Michael nodded, gripping his watch like a lifeline. The scarred man appeared at his side. "Calm in the storm. Follow me. There's a hidden passage." "It's our only chance." The group broke into a run, dodging gunfire, diving behind scattered crates and rusted machinery. The secret door slid open, revealing a narrow stairwell spiraling downward. Darkness swallowed them whole as they descended, leaving the violent noise behind. The stairs were slick with years of neglect, but their feet found purchase silent, quick. At the bottom, a heavy steel hatch sealed behind them. Braith pressed a hidden button, a mechanical hiss, and they were inside. The underground chamber was a stark contrast, sterile, cold, clinical. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, revealing rows of sealed pods, faded military insignias, and monitors flickering with static. Michael's breath hitched. What is this place? The scarred man stepped forward. The vault. Where men like your father were kept after they vanished. Shaw examined the monitors. Cryosuspension. Black site. No records. Braith nodded grimly. Deep rust operatives. Ghost soldiers. Frozen between death and erasure. Michael felt the weight of the watch, ticking louder now. Why freeze them? Why hide them here? The scarred man's eyes darkened. Because they were too dangerous to live, and too dangerous to die. Suddenly, an alarm blared, a shrill scream cutting through the silence. The monitors flickered to life, showing live feeds from the hangar above. The attackers had breached the main floor and were spreading. We have minutes, Braith said. We need to move. Shaw grabbed a tablet and swiped through files. There's a protocol to extract the watchbearer, but it's complicated. Michael swallowed hard. Complicated how? Shaw hesitated. It means facing what's buried in the vault. The truth your father ran from. Braith stepped to a sealed pod, tapping a keypad. The door hissed open, revealing a frozen soldier inside. The face was distorted, barely human. One of Deep Rust's casualties, Braith said. No body, no burial, just this. Michael stared, the horror settling deep. Are they all like this? The scarred man's voice was steady, but heavy. Most. They were experimented on, frozen, forgotten, waiting for the right moment to be unleashed. Or to die quietly. A cold draft swept the chamber as the watch ticked again, a warning, a heartbeat, a countdown. Suddenly, lights flickered violently. The ground trembled. They're breaking through, Shaw said, urgency sharp. We have to finish this now. Michael felt a hand on his shoulder. You carry more than a watch, the scarred man said. You carry the burden of a war buried by lies. Michael clenched his fists. The watch is ticking now, a roar in his ears. The path ahead was unknown, filled with danger and secrets. But there was no turning back. The cold air in the vault clung to Michael's skin like a warning. Every breath he took fooled the dim monitors, but no one spoke. Braith and Shaw were busy securing the chamber, double-checking weapons, their faces carved from fatigue and steel. The scarred man moved silently toward a terminal, fingers dancing over the keys, like he was trying to unlock a memory long buried. Michael's gaze drifted to the frozen soldier in the pod, their features twisted, like a nightmare caught between life and death. Who are they? He asked quietly. Braith didn't answer at once. Instead, he ran a hand through his thinning hair and exhaled. Deep Rust operatives. Men who disappeared without a trace. Erased from every record. Shaw nodded grimly. The government wanted to forget them. We wanted to remember. The scarred man didn't look up. And now, you've woken something that should have stayed asleep. Michael's fingers tightened around the Hamilton. The ticking was steady, like a heartbeat in a silent room. What exactly did my father do? Why was he buried here? The scarred man finally spoke, voice rough with years of regret. He led a team tasked with erasing enemies from the shadows. But when the orders turned dark, he refused. Braith turned toward Michael, eyes sharp. That refusal made him a liability. The watch you carry is both a marker and a key. It's proof he existed and proof someone wants to erase that proof for good. The hangar's distant sounds reminded them they weren't alone. Those who hunt us believe wiping the past will secure their future. Suddenly, the terminal flickered to life. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, accompanied by a map highlighting several locations, red dots pulsing ominously. Shaw's voice was low but urgent. They've deployed assets. They're mobilizing. Michael felt the walls close in, the weight of the unknown pressing hard. We need to act, before those dots become targets. The red dots on the screen blinked steadily, each pulse a heartbeat in a map scarred by decades of secrecy. Michael traced his finger along one of the points. What are these? Shaw's gaze flickered up, sharp and hard. Sites tied to Deep Rust, places where operatives vanished, and where remnants of their missions linger. Braith pulled up satellite images. Decaying compounds, empty warehouses, Dead drop zones long abandoned. Michael's pulse quickened. So they're still out there? Braith nodded grimly. More than you think. Ghosts hidden beneath layers of classified files. Your father disappeared, trying to dismantle this network from inside. The scarred man stepped forward. And now, with that watch ticking again, the ghosts are waking up. A faint hum vibrated through the chamber. The Hamilton on Michael's wrist pulsed in time. Why does it keep ticking? Michael demanded. Braith's voice was low, serious. Because it's not just a watch, it's a beacon. A signal that someone or something is coming back. The scarred man's eyes darkened. And you're the target. Outside the vault, muffled footsteps echoed. Shaw raised his rifle. They're close. The tension snapped tight like a wire ready to snap. Michael's thoughts spun. He'd never wanted any part of this hidden war. But now, it felt like the battle was inside his own blood. What's the plan? Braith glanced at the others. We split up. Cover those locations. Find what we can before they do, the scarred man added, and keep the watch safe. Whatever happens, it can't fall into their hands. Michael swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the mission settle like armor. The group moved toward the stairwell, ready to return to the surface. But Michael paused, looking once more at the frozen soldier. Is he really gone? The scarred man's face tightened. Part of him is, but the rest, waiting, like all of us. Michael's fingers brushed the watch. It felt warm now, alive, a reminder that some secrets refused to stay buried. The stairwell groaned beneath their weight as they ascended, the distant clamor from the hangar above growing louder. Michael's thoughts spun faster than the ticking watch on his wrist. Each step felt heavier, like carrying not just his body, but the weight of a past he never asked to inherit. Braith led the way, every muscle taut, every sense alert for the inevitable confrontation. Outside, the hangar had transformed into a battlefield. Shadows darted between overturned crates and shattered glass. The attackers moved with deadly precision, their faces hidden behind masks, their weapons silent but deadly. Shaw's voice cut through the chaos. We need to get to the command post. Cut their communications. Michael's heart pounded in time with the watch's insistent ticking, as if it were guiding him. They moved fast, ducking behind machinery and slipping through dark corridors. The scarred man stayed close, eyes scanning every corner. Deep rust was more than a mission, it was a curse. Every man involved carries it, whether alive or dead. Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. What curse? The man's voice dropped to a whisper. Erasure, forgetting, being hunted by shadows you helped create. The group reached a metal door marked command in faded stenciling. Braith kicked it open, revealing a room cluttered with monitors and radios. Static crackled, mixed with urgent voices in languages Michael couldn't place. Shaw went straight to the main console, fingers flying over buttons. I'm shutting them down, he said. But it'll take time. Outside, a low rumble shook the building. The attackers were regrouping. Michael glanced down at the Hamilton. The second hand was spinning erratically, now fast forward, backward, then pausing. This watch, he began. Braith cut him off. It's reacting to something, to them. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. It's more than a beacon now, it's a warning. A sudden explosion rocked the hangar, blowing a section of wall inward. Debris rained down. Move, Braith yelled. They scrambled from the command post just as more armed figures poured in. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, the watch's pulse sensing with the pounding footsteps. The scarred man grabbed Michael's arm. This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a race against time. Against history trying to rewrite itself. The cold night air hit Michael's face the moment they burst through the hangar's side door. Outside, the forest loomed black and endless, trees swaying under the weight of silence and threat. The attackers gave chase, relentless and silent as ghosts. Braith pulled Michael into the shadows, pressing him against a moss-covered wall. We can't outrun them forever, he hissed. We need to split up. Michael's chest tightened, and the watch. Braith's eyes were fierce. Keep it close. It's your lifeline and your target. But if they catch you, They'll never stop. Shaw appeared from behind a tree, nodding. We'll draw their fire. You get to the fallback point. The scarred man handed Michael a map, edges worn and corners creased. Follow the river. It leads to an old safe house. The path was dark and treacherous. Michael's boots sank into mud. The only sound his ragged breaths and the steady tick-tick-tick from the watch. Every snap of a twig behind him set his nerves on edge. He kept looking over his shoulder, but the woods remained empty until a whisper of movement flickered near a fallen log. Michael froze. His heart nearly stopped. A figure stepped into view, no mask, no weapon, just a pair of cold eyes staring him down. The man smiled thinly. Thought you could run with that thing. Michael tightened his grip. Who are you? The man's smile widened. Call me Harper. I'm what's left of Deep Rust's cleanup crew. Michael's breath hitched. You mean ... you want the watch? Harper laughed softly. I want to end the game. And that watch is the last piece. Suddenly, Harper lunged forward. Michael dodged, heart racing as the two collided, grappling in the mud beneath the cold stars. The watch skidded across the ground. Time seemed to slow. Michael dove, grabbing it before Harper's hand could close around it. The watch's pulse flared, almost burning his skin. Harper hissed and retreated into the shadows, leaving Michael gasping. Alone, soaked, and shaking, Michael pressed forward, knowing this was only the beginning. The safe house waited, and with it, answers, or maybe more questions. But one thing was clear. The past wasn't done with him yet. Michael ran through the dense forest, the cold earth beneath his boots, slick with mud and fallen leaves. The watch on his wrist ticked relentlessly, an echo in the quiet night. His breath came in ragged bursts, lungs burning from the sprint, but he didn't dare slow down. Behind him, the faint crunch of boots on twigs kept pace, shadows chasing shadows. Harper's warning echoed in his mind, a grim reminder that this wasn't a game anyone wanted to win. The river, swollen from recent rains, was just ahead. Michael pushed forward, branches clawing at his face, every muscle screaming in protest. The moon, a sliver hidden behind clouds, provided little light, but instinct guided him. The map the scarred man gave him was folded tight in his jacket pocket, his only link to salvation. When the river finally appeared, dark and rushing, Michael slowed just enough to catch his breath, heart hammering against his ribs. He followed the river bank, moving silently, water whispering beside him. Somewhere upstream lay the safe house, a forgotten cabin tucked away from prying eyes and old wars. As he moved, memories flickered like a broken film reel. His father's smile, the stories of a quiet life shattered by secrets, the weight of a legacy Michael never wanted to bear. Now, with every step, those fragments felt heavier, as if the past was reaching out to drag him under. Suddenly, a noise broke the night's fragile calm, a snapping branch behind him. Michael spun, eyes straining in the darkness. Nothing, just the wind. But the watch's ticking quickened, a steady pulse that seemed to sync with his own rising fear. He clutched it tightly, feeling the warmth spreading beneath his skin. This watch wasn't just time, it was life and death. A soft rustle came again, this time closer. Michael crouched low, scanning the tree line. A figure emerged, lean, moving like a shadow himself. Harper. The man's eyes glinted cold under the moonlight. You can't hide, Harper said softly, voice cutting through the night. The past always catches up. Michael's hands balled into fists. Then I'll meet it head on. Harper smiled, thin and cruel. I was hoping you'd say that. Before Michael could react, Harper lunged. The two crashed into the underbrush, a tangle of limbs and desperate struggle. Mud splattered, branches scratched, and the watch skidded free, spinning wildly on the ground. Time seemed to slow. A heartbeat stretched into eternity. Michael dove, grasping the watch just before Harper's hand closed inches away. The pulse flared, searing through Michael's skin, burning with a fierce energy that momentarily stunned both men. Harper staggered back, eyes narrowing. "You don't know what you're holding," he hissed. "But it knows you." Michael scrambled to his feet, adrenaline sharpening his senses. "Then I'll learn." Harper melted into the darkness, leaving Michael alone with the ticking that now roared louder than ever. Panting, Michael pushed onward, driven by a mix of fear and determination. The river curved sharply, and in the distance, a faint glow beckoned. The safe house. It was more than a building. It was a fortress of memories, a sanctuary hiding truths buried beneath layers of deception. The cabin stood in shadow, its weathered wood warped by time and neglect. Windows boarded, door heavy and reinforced. Michael's fingers trembled as he pushed it open, the creak echoing like a warning. Inside, dust thickened the air, the scent of old smoke and forgotten stories. A single lantern flickered on a rough table, casting dancing shadows against peeling wallpaper. Braith and Shaw were already there, faces etched with relief and exhaustion. The scarred man, silent until now, finally spoke. "You made it." Michael dropped the watch onto the table. "It's ticking, slowing, almost hesitant." "Barely." Braith nodded. "Harper's not the only one after you. Deep rust remnants are stirring." The watch woke them all. Shaw's fingers traced lines on a worn map spread across the table. The red dots mean more than locations. They're calls to arms. Signals that deep rust operatives scattered worldwide are regrouping. Michael's eyes darted to the map, each dot a potential death sentence. "Why now?" The scarred man's voice was grim. "Because the balance is shifting. The secrets buried with your father are unraveling." Suddenly, the radio crackled to life, static giving way to a clipped voice. Code red. Hostile activity detected near coordinates 47.23 north, 19.04 east. Repeat. Hostile activity. Braith slammed a fist onto the table. "They've started moving. We have less than 24 hours before the world changes again." Michael swallowed hard, the weight of the mission crushing down. "What do we do?" Shaw's gaze was steely. "We fight. We find who's behind this before they find us." The scarred man's eyes locked on Michael. "And you carry the key, the watch." Michael looked down at the Hamilton. The hands now spun backwards slowly, the ticking irregular, a countdown or a warning. He couldn't tell. "Then I guess I have no choice." The safe house became a war room. Plans were drawn, files examined under flickering lantern light. Each red dot on the map was a thread to follow, a ghost to chase. Braith and Shaw coordinated with off-grid contacts, their voices tense but controlled. Michael sat, watch heavy on his wrist, feeling the pulse of a war he never asked for. The scarred man paced, jaw clenched. "Your father's last act was to bury a truth, so dangerous it could undo everything." Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "What truth?" The man stopped, eyes distant. Deep rust wasn't just an operation. It was a project to weaponize men-turned soldiers into ghosts who could rewrite history. Michael's heart pounded. "Rewrite history?" "Yes," Braith said, stepping forward. "To erase enemies, yes. But also to control narratives, to eliminate threats quietly," Shaw added. "And your father? He chose to stop it, to expose the lies. That made him the biggest threat." Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Michael's fingers grazed the watch. "So I'm a target because I'm his son." The scarred man shook his head slowly. "Because you're the key to what he tried to lock away forever." Hours later, a storm battered the cabin. Rain hammered against the roof. Wind howled like a wounded beast. Outside, shadows moved with intent. The radio squawked again, another alert, another warning. Michael sat alone, the watch ticking steadily now, as if steadying his resolve. His mind flashed back to his father, the man behind the legends and lies. A man who sacrificed everything for truth. Michael wasn't sure if he was ready to follow that path, but the watch didn't ask for readiness. It demanded action. With a deep breath, Michael stood and faced the night beyond the cracked windows. The war was coming to him. The shadows were closing in. And time, merciless and unyielding, was running out. The first light of dawn barely touched the horizon when Michael finally fell asleep. The storm outside had faded into a quiet drizzle, but the storm inside his mind raged without pause. His body ached from exhaustion, but the weight of the Hamilton watch on his wrist felt like a constant reminder no rest was allowed. The safe house was a fragile shield, and out there, beyond its peeling walls, the ghosts of his father's past were stirring to life. When the harsh clang of metal on metal woke him, the room was thick with tension. Braith was already awake, crouched near the battered radio, his voice low but urgent. "They're moving faster than we thought. The network's activation is spreading. This isn't just about one target anymore, it's a hunt for anyone linked to Deep Rust." Michael rubbed the sleep from his eyes, trying to anchor himself in the reality pressing down on him. Shaw joined them, face grim, fingers wrapped tightly around his rifle. "We're running out of time. If they break through here, there's nowhere left to run." Michael felt a chill ripple through his chest. "Then what do we do? Stand and fight?" Braith's jaw clenched. "We don't have a choice. But first, we have to know who exactly we're up against." The scarred man, silent until now, stepped forward with a map and a stack of old files. It's time to break the silence. The files told stories buried deep beneath layers of government cover-ups, operations erased from history, soldiers lost without a trace, secrets buried with lies. Michael's fingers trembled as he flipped through photos of men whose faces seemed both familiar and broken. "These were your father's men," the scarred man said quietly. "His brothers in arms, all disappeared. All silenced." The room grew heavier. The weight of forgotten lives pressed down on them like a stone. Michael stared at a photo of a young soldier, sharp eyes, a half smile that didn't quite reach his face. "Who were they?" Braith's voice was steady, but carried the weight of memories. "Men who trusted him, who believed in a mission. Until that mission turned into a nightmare," Shaw added. "The ones who tried to stop Deep Rust from inside, who paid the price." Silence stretched between them, thick and unyielding. The safe house phone rang sharply, breaking the moment like a gunshot. Braith answered quickly. "This is Braith," a voice crackled, tense and hurried. "They've found one of the sites, the old training ground near Lake Caldwell. Heavy presence. They're moving in." The line went dead. Shaw slammed the receiver down. "That's our next stop. We can't let them destroy what's left." Michael nodded, determination rising. "Then we move, now." The drive to Lake Caldwell was a brutal reminder of the stakes. The winding roads cut through dense forests, shadows clinging like ghosts. Michael's eyes flicked to the watch, now glowing faintly under the dashboard light. It pulsed steadily, a heartbeat in the dark. Braith's hands gripped the steering wheel tight, knuckles white. "They're already there," he said. "And they're not alone." Shaw checked his ammo with practiced ease. "We're walking into a hornet's nest." The old training ground was a sprawling ruin, hollowed by nature. Rusted equipment lay tangled in vines, concrete bunkers cracked and crumbling. The wind whispered through broken windows, carrying echoes of past screams and secrets. Michael's boots crunched on gravel as they approached the main compound. Shadows shifted to many 2 counts. Figures moved with military precision, eyes glowing through night vision goggles. Braith signaled for silence, and the team melted into cover. "We need to find their leader," he whispered. "Take him down, and the rest will scatter." Michael swallowed, heart pounding. Every step felt heavier, the weight of his father's legacy anchoring him to the ground. "What if it's a trap?" Shaw asked, voice low but edged with steel. "Then we fight through it," Braith replied. Like soldiers, the team split into pairs, moving with the silence of ghosts. Michael followed Braith, eyes scanning the perimeter, every muscle coiled. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed gunfire. The world exploded into chaos. Bullets tore through the air, shouts and curses mixing with the thunder of weapons. Michael dropped behind a bunker, heart slamming in his chest. "Contact front," Braith yelled. "Hold your positions." Michael fired back instinctively, adrenaline sharpening his aim. Shadows danced in the firefight, enemies advancing with ruthless precision. The ground shook with explosions. Michael saw a figure dart behind a fallen tree. Harper. The man's eyes locked on him, cold and calculating. They exchanged fire, neither yielding. Shaw appeared beside Michael, firing bursts that drove the enemy back. "We've got to push forward," he shouted. "Find their command center." Michael nodded, swallowing fear. The team advanced through the crumbling compound, each step a battle. The air was thick with smoke and desperation. Michael's mind raced, fragments of his father's stories fueling his resolve. They reached a reinforced bunker, the suspected command post. Braith planted charges with swift precision. "Once we're clear, this place goes up." Michael covered the exit, watching for movement. Inside, muffled voices argued. Suddenly, the door burst open. Harper stepped out, flanked by armed men. His smile was dark, victorious. "You brought the storm to my doorstep, boy." Michael leveled his weapon. "This ends now." Harper laughed. "No, it's only just beginning." The firefight resumed with brutal intensity. Bullets ripped through metal and flesh. Michael moved like a force possessed, every shot fueled by years of unanswered questions. Harper's men fell one by one, but he slipped past, disappearing into the shadows. The bunker exploded behind them, a fiery blast that shook the earth. Smoke and flame swallowed the ruin. Michael's ears rang, vision blurred. When the dust settled, the team regrouped, breathing hard, blooded but alive. "We've delayed them," Braith said. "But they'll be back, stronger, smarter." Michael looked down at the watch. Its ticking slowed, steady now, like a heartbeat regained. "What now?" Shaw asked. The scarred man's voice was steady, filled with grim resolve. "Now, we finish this, before the past devours us all." The night clung to the woods like a shroud as Michael, Braith, Shaw, and the scarred man moved deeper into enemy territory. The ruins of the training ground were behind them, but the war was far from over. The weight of the watch on Michael's wrist felt heavier than ever, its ticking a constant reminder that time was running out, not just for them, but for everything they fought to protect. They navigated a narrow trail lined with gnarled trees, their branches scraping against each other like whispered warnings. Each step stirred the damp leaves beneath their boots, the sound swallowed quickly by the thick silence. Michael's eyes darted to the shadows beyond the firelight, every flicker a potential threat. The forest was alive with dangers. He could no longer ignore men who had forgotten mercy and remembered only survival. Braith signaled a halt. "They're close," he murmured, his breath misting in the cold air. Shaw scanned the tree line with a practiced gaze, rifle at the ready. Movement up ahead, at least 6 hostiles. The scarred man's eyes darkened. "It's a trap, and we're the bait." Michael's heart pounded as adrenaline surged through his veins. "What's the plan?" "We split," Braith said flatly. "Shaw and I flank left. You and the scarred man take the right. We hit hard, fast, and disappear." Michael swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "And the watch?" Braith's gaze was steady. "Keep it safe." "No heroics." Michael nodded, the cold resolve settling in. The group moved like shadows, slipping through the underbrush with silent steps. The forest seemed to close in, the trees stretching like sentinels guarding secrets. Then, without warning, gunfire shattered the silence, sharp, sudden, deadly. Michael dove behind a fallen log. Bullets tore into the earth around him. "Return fire." Braith's voice cut through the chaos. Shaw's rifle barked in the night, each shot precise and deadly. Michael scrambled to his feet, scanning for targets. A figure emerged briefly, one of the enemy, then disappeared into the darkness. The watch on Michael's wrist seemed to pulse faster, almost alive. Suddenly, a grenade exploded nearby, sending dirt and splinters flying. Michael was thrown against a tree, pain exploding in his shoulder. He gritted his teeth, pushing past the shock. The scarred man was shouting orders, rallying their small team amidst the chaos. "Hold the line. Don't let them break through." Michael's vision blurred, but he forced himself to focus. The enemy was relentless, pressing the attack with brutal force. Yet, the team held firm, every member a pillar of resistance in the night's storm. The firefight stretched on, a deadly dance of survival and strategy. As the gunfire finally began to wane, Michael spotted movement, a dark figure slipping through the trees. Harper, the same man who had almost stolen the watch earlier, was back, and this time he wasn't alone. Michael's pulse quickened as Harper raised his weapon, aiming directly at Braith. Without thinking, Michael shouted a warning. Braith turned just as the shot rang out, catching the bullet in his arm. The scarred man returned fire, driving Harper and his men back into the shadows. Michael rushed to Braith's side, pressing a hand to the bleeding wound. "We need to move," Braith gasped, pain etched across his face. "They'll regroup and come again." Shaw helped Michael lift Braith to his feet. "The safe house isn't safe anymore. We have to fall back." Michael glanced at the watch. "It's ticking, steady but urgent." "Where now?" The scarred man's eyes flicked to the east. "There's an old bunker nearby, a relic from the Cold War. We can hole up there and regroup." The journey was grueling. Braith's injuries slowed them, each step a test of endurance. The forest seemed endless, a maze of shadows and memories. Finally, the bunker appeared, an imposing structure of steel and concrete, half buried in earth and vines. They slipped inside, the heavy door clanging shut behind them. The cold air inside was stale, but offered shelter from the storm outside. Michael leaned against the wall, exhaustion crashing over him. The scarred man moved to a console, flicking switches that sparked to life with a hum. "We're not out of this yet. Whoever's after us has resources and reach." Shaw cleaned his rifle methodically, eyes scanning the dim room. "We'll need every advantage to survive." Michael stared at the watch, its face glowing softly. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why the watch?" The scarred man's expression was grim. "Because your father entrusted you with the last piece of a puzzle that could change everything. The watch is a key, a symbol of loyalty, sacrifice, and the truth they want to bury." Braith winced as he sat, arm wrapped in a makeshift bandage. "Loyalty comes with a price," he said quietly. "Sometimes that price is everything." Michael's fingers clenched into fists. "Then we pay it, whatever it takes." The bunker's walls seemed to close in, a cage of steel and secrets. Outside, the enemy was regrouping, planning their next move. Inside, a fractured band of brothers and a young man bound by fate prepared for the battle ahead. The past was not done with Michael Keller, not yet. The cold air inside the bunker was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of aging machinery and the rhythmic ticking of the Hamilton watch on Michael's wrist. Outside, the world felt like it was unraveling, but inside these steel walls, time seemed to slow, a deceptive pause before the next storm. Michael sat hunched against the concrete, the weight of his father's legacy crushing down on him, the living thing. Braith's injury throbbed beneath the bandage, each pulse a reminder of how close they were to losing everything. Shaw methodically cleaned his rifle in the corner, every movement precise, practiced, a quiet ritual against the chaos. The scarred man stood near the console, eyes distant but sharp, mapping out their next move like a general preparing for battle. Michael's gaze drifted over the faded blueprints pinned to the wall, the outlines of forgotten tunnels and secret chambers beneath the bunker. "Deep Rust's reach is longer than we imagined," the scarred man said quietly. "They've infiltrated every level of command. Even here, we're not safe." Michael swallowed hard. "Then how do we fight something we can't see?" Braith's voice was low but resolute. "By becoming shadows ourselves, using their silence against them." The team gathered around a crude wooden table, maps and encrypted files spread across it like a battlefield. Shaw tapped a finger on one location, a forgotten city on the outskirts of their territory. "If we can cut their supply lines here, we cripple their operations." "But it's heavily guarded." Michael's jaw clenched. "Then we hit it hard and fast. No mistakes." The scarred man nodded. "Agreed, But we'll need more than firepower. We need information. Michael's mind raced, haunted by the watch's steady tick-tick-tick and unyielding countdown. What if we used the watch as a signal, he asked. A way to draw them out on our terms. Braith raised an eyebrow. That's risky. But it might be our best chance. Shaw checked his rifle and nodded. We bait the trap, then spring it. Plans were made with grim determination. Every detail scrutinized. Every possibility weighed against the razor's edge of survival. The safe house was no longer safe. The bunker just a brief refuge. They were hunted men, shadows in a war that refused to stay buried. Michael's thoughts flickered to his father, the man who'd fought in silence, who'd paid the ultimate price. Now, Michael was the one holding the torch, ready to walk the same path. Night fell like a curtain, swallowing the bunker in darkness. The team moved with stealth, slipping through tunnels carved long ago. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. Michael's fingers brushed the Hamilton watch. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat beneath his skin. Every tick a promise, a warning. They reached the outskirts of the city, a maze of crumbling buildings and empty streets. Shadows danced in the flickering streetlights, but no sign of life. Shaw moved ahead, rifle raised, senses razor sharp. Braith and the scarred man thanked Michael, their presence a shield against the unknown. The mission was clear-cut: the supply lines, send a message, and survive. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a lone sentinel, eyes sharp, weapon ready. Shaw's voice was a whisper. Contact, a flash of movement, a shot fired. The sentinel went down silently, no alarm raised. Michael's breath caught, heart pounding. We're not alone, he whispered. They moved deeper into the city's heart, each step closer to the enemy's call. The buildings grew taller, shadows thicker. The air smelled of rust and decay. Michael's pulse matched the ticking watch. The two rhythms entwined like a dance on the edge of oblivion. A sudden noise, a door creaking, a footstep echoing, made them freeze. Harper stepped into the dim light, a ghost from the past. His smile was a slash of darkness. You're persistent, he said softly. But this game isn't over. Michael squared his shoulders, weapon ready. Neither am I. The standoff stretched, tension thick enough to suffocate. Gunfire erupted, chaos exploding in the silence. Michael fired with fierce precision, every shot a scream of defiance. Harper moved like a shadow, elusive and deadly. The battle tore through the ruins, echoing off broken walls. Michael felt the weight of every bullet, every near miss. The Hamilton pulsed wildly, burning against his skin. When the smoke cleared, Harper slipped away once again, leaving behind silence and the taste of unfinished business. The team regrouped, bruised but unbroken. Braith grinned grimly. We hit them hard, Shaw nodded. But the war's just beginning. Michael looked at the watch. It's ticking, slowing, steadying. Then let's make sure it's a war we can win. The dawn was a thin grey line against the horizon when Michael finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. The bunker behind them was silent now, a hollow shell of shattered plans and fading echoes. The night's battle had been brutal, close calls, close losses, but they had survived, barely. The cold air bit into his skin, but the weight of the watch on his wrist burned hotter than frostbite. Braith sat on a nearby crate, his injured arm resting heavily across his lap. The makeshift bandage was stained dark with dried blood, but his eyes held that familiar fire, unbroken, unyielding. Shaw paced back and forth, restless, the sharp edge of tension leaving his movements. The scarred man was quiet, face shadowed, lost in thought that felt far away. Michael's gaze drifted to the Hamilton watch. Its ticking was steady now, almost serene. But beneath the surface, he knew it carried a storm. The secrets it held, the history it guarded, were weapons waiting to be wielded. He clenched his fists. Loyalty to his father, to their mission, demanded sacrifice. But the cost was becoming unbearable. We need allies, Braith finally said, breaking the silence. We can't fight this war alone. Michael's brow furrowed. Who do we trust? After everything, after the betrayals, Shaw's voice was low but firm. There are fractures everywhere. Deep Rust's poison runs deep, but not everyone is lost. The scarred man stepped forward, eyes sharp. I know someone. An old contact, someone who owes your father a debt. Michael's pulse quickened. Where? The man smiled grimly. In the shadows of the city. Someone who's been watching, waiting for the right moment. The decision was made. They would risk it. The journey back to the city was tense. Each mile closer to their contact brought a fresh wave of unease. The streets were a maze of forgotten promises and whispered threats. The skyline loomed like a beast, cold and unfeeling. Michael's thoughts raced questions with no answers, doubts with no reprieve. As a nondescript building nestled between graffiti-scarred walls and flickering street lamps, they stopped. The scarred man knocked twice, then once more 3 sharp taps. The door creaked open, revealing a tall figure cloaked in shadows. His eyes glinted with recognition, and something darker, regret or relief. Jacob, the scarred man said quietly. He was your father's right hand in the old days. A ghost in his own right. Michael stepped forward, feeling the weight of history pressing down. We need your help. Jacob's gaze was hard. Help comes at a price. Michael nodded. We're ready. Inside. The room was dim, and cluttered maps, weapons, and old radios scattered across a worn table. Jacob's presence was commanding, a mix of calculated calm and restless energy. He spoke in whispers, telling stories of Deep Rust's fractured network, of operatives turned enemies, and secrets buried beneath layers of lies. We've been compromised, Jacob warned. Our enemies are closer than you think. Friends are scarce, and betrayals are many. Michael's hands tightened around the watch. Then we find who's left. We root out the rot. Jacob nodded slowly. But it won't be easy. This war is as much about trust as it is about firepower. Plans unfolded with razor-sharp precision. Information flowed like lifeblood through the room, fueling new strategies and fragile hopes. They would strike at the heart of Deep Rust's operations, dismantling the network piece by piece. Michael felt the surge of purpose, the fierce hunger to reclaim what was lost. But as the hours stretched, a shadow crept into the room. Doubt. Michael caught a flicker in Jacob's eyes, a hesitation that didn't go unnoticed. The scarred man's gaze sharpened, sensing the undercurrents. We have to be careful, he warned. Not everyone who walks into the light means well. That night, as the city pulsed with indifferent life, Michael lay awake, the watches ticking, a constant companion. Loyalties were tested, alliances fragile, and the line between friend and foe blurred like a cracked mirror. The war for the truth was no longer just about survival, it was about identity, trust, and the price one pays for both. The city's pulse was a low, relentless hum beneath the rain-soaked streets. Neon lights flickered, casting fractured reflections on puddles that mirrored a fractured world. Michael moved silently alongside Braith, Shaw, and Jacob through the labyrinth of alleys, their boots muffled against the wet pavement. Every shadow could hide a threat, every whisper a trap. Jacob's knowledge was invaluable but incomplete. Deep Rust's network was like a spider's web, fragile, yet deadly. One wrong move, and the entire structure could collapse, dragging them all into the abyss. Michael's fingers brushed the Hamilton watch beneath his sleeve. It pulsed faintly, a steady heartbeat against the chaos. Their target was a small, heavily guarded warehouse rumored to be a communication hub for Deep Rust's operatives. It was their chance to intercept messages, disrupt operations, and perhaps find Harper's true identity. The risk was immense, but hesitation was a luxury they couldn't afford. Braith signaled a halt near a rusted dumpster. They've increased patrols, he whispered. Cameras, armed guards, and a security drone. We need a plan. Shaw scanned the perimeter with cold precision. I'll take the drone out. Michael and Jacob, you're on point for the entry. The scarred man's voice was a low growl. I'll cover the rear with Braith. The night deepened as they moved into position. The air was thick with tension, each breath a silent prayer. Michael's heart thundered, but his steps were steady. The warehouse loomed ahead, a monolith of steel and shadows. He could almost hear the pulse of Deep Rust's dark secrets trapped inside. Shaw's signal came sharp, deliberate. The drone's mechanical buzz faded into silence as it crashed into a heap behind the building. Braith and the scarred man flanked the rear, eyes sharp from movement. Michael and Jacob slipped through a side door left slightly ajar, disappearing into darkness. Inside, the air was stale and thick with the scent of oil and metal. The dim glow of monitors flickered, casting eerie shadows. Rows of computers hummed softly, lines of code scrolling endlessly, a digital fortress of lies. Michael's pulse quickened. This was the nerve center, the beating heart of Deep Rust's operations. Jacob moved with quiet confidence, hacking into the mainframe with swift precision. Michael watched the door, every muscle coiled. Suddenly, footsteps echoed a patrol. Shadows crept closer, the faint clink of weapons drawing near. Michael drew his weapon, breath steady. The door handle twisted slowly. Without hesitation, he fired a single shot, clean and final. The guard crumpled silently. The team moved deeper, uncovering files and encrypted messages revealing sleeper agents, planned attacks, and a list of targets. Harper's name appeared repeatedly, always at the center of chaos. Michael's hands trembled as he downloaded the data. The weight of the watch was both a burden and a beacon. Time was running out, and every second brought new dangers. They had what they came for, but escape would be just as perilous. A distant alarm shattered the silence, a shrill wail that echoed through the warehouse. "They've been alerted," Jacob hissed. "Move." The team sprinted through corridors, bullets tearing through walls and sparks flying from shattered consoles. Michael felt the heat of close calls, the sting of near misses. Outside, the rain had intensified, washing away footprints, but not memories. The team scattered into the night, disappearing into the city's veins, safe for now. But the web was tightening, and with each thread pulled, the trap closed faster. Back in the safety of a hidden loft, the team pored over the stolen data. The revelations were staggering. Deep Rust was orchestrating a coup from the shadows, manipulating governments, assassinating those who stood in their way. The scale was beyond anything Michael had imagined. His gaze lingered on the watch, its ticking slower now, almost contemplative. This war was bigger than revenge. It was about reclaiming a stolen future. The past had shackled them for too long. It was time to break free. The early morning light crept through the cracked blinds, casting long shadows across the cramped room. Michael sat at the battered table, the Hamilton watch resting on his wrist like a silent sentinel. Outside, the city breathed a restless giant, unaware of the battles waged in its veins. The stolen data lay before them, a roadmap to enemy plans and betrayals, but it also carried a weight heavier than any bullet. Braith stirred, wincing as he shifted his injured arm. Shaw paced the room, the restless energy of a soldier always ready for the next fight. Jacob leaned against the wall, face shadowed, thoughts locked behind guarded eyes. Michael's gaze held theirs, searching for a flicker of hope amidst the ruin. "We've come too far too full now," he said quietly. The team was a mosaic of scars and stories, brothers in arms forged in fire and loss. Each man carried ghosts, memories of comrades left behind, battles won and lost. The war they fought was not just against Deep Rust, but against the silence that followed every sacrifice. Michael's mind drifted to his father, a man who had paid the ultimate price to protect a truth the world refused to see. Their plan was simple but perilous. Strike at Deep Rust's hidden command center, a fortress buried beneath the city's underbelly. The data had revealed its location, a labyrinth of tunnels and steel, guarded by shadows and secrets. Michael felt the watch pulse, a steady heartbeat guiding them toward the inevitable confrontation. As night fell, the city's pulse quickened. The team moved with quiet precision, slipping through back alleys and forgotten passages. The weight of the coming battle pressed down, heavy and unyielding. Every step was a defiance against fate, a refusal to be silenced. Michael's breath was steady, his resolve hardening with each heartbeat. They reached the entrance, an unmarked door hidden behind layers of decay. Braith checked the perimeter. Shaw positioned himself at the rear. Jacob worked quickly to disable the alarm systems. Michael's fingers brushed the watch, its ticking syncing with the pounding of his heart. The door creaked open, swallowing them into darkness. Inside, the command center was a cathedral of steel and light screens flickering with data, voices murmuring orders, and the cold hum of machines. The team spread out, weapons drawn, moving like ghosts through the corridors. Every corner held a secret, every shadow a threat. Michael's eyes searched for Harper, the man who had haunted their every step. Suddenly, a voice echoed a chilling command that sent a ripple through the silence. Find them. Don't let them leave alive. The enemy surged, a tide of steel and fury crashing against their defenses. Michael fired with fierce determination, every shot a testament to years of pain and sacrifice. The Hamilton's ticking grew louder, a drumbeat in the chaos. The battle tore through the command center, echoing with shouts and gunfire. Michael felt the weight of every loss, every brother fallen in the fight for truth. Yet, amidst the fury, a strange calm settled over him, a clarity born from purpose. This was their reckoning. Harper appeared at the far end, a twisted smile playing on his lips. The final confrontation was imminent, a collision of past and present, loyalty and betrayal. Michael tightened his grip on the watch, ready to face the darkness head-on. The cold light of dawn filtered through the shattered windows, casting fractured beams across the concrete floor. Michael stood alone in the command center's ruined heart, the Hamilton watch glinting on his wrist like a beacon of silent defiance. Around him, the remnants of Deep Rust's empire lay, broken machines silenced, screens dark, voices stilled. But the true battle was about to begin. Footsteps echoed sharply down the steel corridors, heavy boots, measured and commanding. Michael's breath caught as the door swung open, revealing a tall figure in full general's uniform, the kind of man whose presence bent the room with authority and unspoken menace. The general's eyes locked onto the watch with sudden recognition. That Hamilton, the general breathed, his voice barely more than a whisper. I never thought I'd see one again. Michael felt the weight of history press down like a tidal wave. The watch was more than a timepiece. It was a symbol of an era, a badge of honor carried by men who had walked through fire and come back changed. The general's stare was a frozen moment, shock, respect, and something darker. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. Then the general spoke again. You have no idea what you've unleashed. Michael's fingers tightened around the watch. Maybe, but I know what I have to do. Behind the general, the remaining forces of Deep Rust stirred, soldiers hesitant, unsure in the face of this unexpected reckoning. Michael could feel the tide turning. The brothers in arms who had stood beside him, who had risked everything, were arriving, quiet footsteps, shadows moving like ghosts through the ruins. The battle reignited with ferocity, but now Michael was not alone. The brothers in arms, men who had survived wars and betrayals, surged forward. The air was thick with the roar of gunfire, shouts of defiance, and the crackle of shattered loyalties. Michael moved through the chaos with the calm of a man who had made peace with his past. Every shot fired was a chapter closing, every breath a step closer to redemption. The general's forces faltered, caught off guard by the fury of men who refused to be forgotten. In the heart of the fray, Michael faced the general once more. Their eyes locked, a silent battle of wills. The general reached for his weapon, but before he could draw, Michael's voice cut through the din. It's over. The general hesitated, then lowered his arm. The war was ending, not with a roar, but a brittle silence filled with the weight of truth. The Hamilton watch pulsed softly on Michael's wrist, a steady heartbeat in the ruins of a broken world. As the dust settled, Michael looked to his brothers in arms, scarred, tired, but unbroken. They had fought shadows, faced betrayals, and survived storms that could have swallowed them whole. And now, with the dawn breaking, they stood together, guardians of a legacy too fierce to fade. The watch was no longer just a cheap timepiece. It was a testament to loyalty, sacrifice, and the unyielding spirit of those who refused to be silenced.